For 30 years, André Bamberski pursued justice. And for 30 years, André Bamberski was met with insurmountable brick walls and uncooperative institutions. Yet still, he persisted. André's paternal instincts reigned supreme over all of the frustration and seemingly unending defeat. His daughter had been murdered, and the man responsible had been allowed to walk free. André was a father unwilling to give up on his little girl. Kalinka Bamberski was just 14 years old when her life came to an abrupt end. A kind, beautiful young girl with long blonde hair and blue eyes. Her father described her as the embodiment of youthful vitality. She was an active teenager who enjoyed skiing, windsurfing, and ice skating. A bright flame snuffed out far too soon. In July of 1982, Kalinka was found dead, as if asleep, in her own bed. The cause of death was unknown and would remain that way for quite some time. Kalinka was reportedly found by her stepfather, Dieter Krombach, who was a successful cardiologist. Upon the arrival of emergency services, Dieter told them that the previous evening at around 7:30 p.m., he had injected Kalinka with a compound, which he did not name, to help her tan more easily. 3 hours later, he looked in on her and gave her a glass of water. Later, at around midnight, he said, he went back to her room because her light was still on, and finding her still awake, he administered a sleeping tablet. 2 days after her death, an autopsy was done by 2 doctors. Bamberski believed that, despite it being against standard practice, Krombach was allowed to be in the room during the autopsy. He is quoted many times throughout the 16-page report to be in the room. However, the German authorities insisted he was outside of the room and spoke to the doctors afterwards. Among the things noted in the autopsy report was fresh blood around the teenager's genitalia, which had been torn, and a white substance inside her. There were several injection marks on her arms, right leg, and thorax, as well as undigested food in her stomach. Despite the obvious signs of abuse, Krombach was never interviewed or treated as a suspect. In fact, the only time the police ever spoke to him was the day after Kalinka's death, 1 day before her autopsy. And the conversation took place over the phone by Commissioner Gabath of the Lindau police. Krombach told Gabath a different story to the one he had given originally. He said he had injected Kalinka with iron and cobalt to treat anemia, although, perhaps unknown to the commissioner, Kalinka did not suffer from anemia. He also told Gabath, finding Kalinka unconscious, he had injected her with dopamine and Dilaudid, one a neurotransmitter that increases heart rate, the other a narcotic. Years later, a French investigation would find that he had also injected her with Novidigol, Isopten, and cortisone. As French medical experts stated, the combination of dopamine and Isopten was dangerous. No toxicology tests were done during the original autopsy, and the time of death was put at 3 to 4 a.m., which would not explain the undigested food. The German medical examiner never analyzed the white substance in Kalinka's genitalia, but did remove the sex organs, which have never been recovered. It would be 3 months before André would receive his daughter's autopsy report. But by then, the local prosecutor in the Lindau region had closed the case, and an official inquest had concluded that there was no foul play involved in Kalinka's death. Seeing all the inconsistencies, Bamberski immediately requested for the case to be reopened and for proper forensic tests to be done. However, the prosecutor, who was in no rush to reply to Bamberski whatsoever, denied the requests, stating that he saw no reason to reanalyze the evidence. Even Bamberski's ex-wife, Kalinka's mother, accused him of chasing a vendetta against Krombach and refused to listen to him. Bamberski refused to give up. He hired a German lawyer by the name of Rolf Bossi to help him. Bossi managed to convince the prosecutor to order a review of the autopsy. It was carried out by 3 surgeons, led by Professor Spahn of the Munich Forensic Institute. Spahn cast doubt on Krombach's testimony by concluding that the cobalt and iron injection had been given much later than dinner time. Yet he provided a limited and inconclusive report. He did not state the cause of death, nor make mention of the condition of the girl's genitalia. Although Spahn wrote to the prosecutor's office asking to examine the missing genital parts, he was brushed off with a vague reply. Bossi also managed to persuade Commissioner Gabath to agree to interview the other witnesses in the house at the time of Kalinka's death, even though it was a year after the incident. There was her mother, Danielle, Krombach's 2 children, and Kalinka's brother, Nicholas. There were several ways that their accounts did not match with Krombach's, particularly in regards to whether Kalinka received an injection around dinner time. Everyone also agreed that Kalinka was in good health. Uncovering even more inconsistencies in the case, Bossi requested again that the case be reopened, but he too was denied on the basis of insufficient evidence. During an interview with a reporter, Bamberski recalled at that point he knew he needed to act. "I went to Lindau and distributed a leaflet I had written to the inhabitants. I told them they needed to know. In their town, right now, was a criminal doctor. And I gave his name, address, and said that he had raped and killed my daughter. It was the beer festival that day, and there were many people in town. After 2 hours, the police came to arrest me," he said. The leaflet also claimed that Krombach was protected by powerful locals. Krombach successfully sued Bamberski for defamation of character and was awarded 500,000 German marks. He was also threatened with up to 6 months in prison if he did it again. Instead, he got a phone book from Lindau and mailed pamphlets to everyone from a post office in Toulouse. In 1984, Bamberski got a French lawyer who filed a complaint against Krombach in a Paris court, but the proceedings were slow thanks to uncooperative German authorities. Bamberski wondered if German obstinacy was linked to Krombach's background in diplomatic service. There were rumors that he had worked as a secret agent in Morocco. However, after studying German law, he came to the realization that in all cases concerning a German national versus a foreigner, the German always won. In 1985, 3.5 years after Kalinka's death, the German authorities finally replied to Bamberski's requests to have his daughter's sex organs re-examined and forensically tested. He was told that it was impossible because the detached parts had been returned to France along with the body. Kalinka's sealed coffin was subsequently exhumed. The sex organs were not there. This missing bit of key evidence meant that, in a sense, Bamberski had run out of options, but he refused to abandon his efforts. In 1988, an authoritative report by French forensic experts established the cobalt iron injection as the cause of death due to asphyxia and cardiovascular shock. This proved Krombach killed her, even if by accident. But yet again, the German authorities turned a blind eye. In 1993, Krombach was to finally be brought to justice in a French court, but it was postponed multiple times. When it finally came to pass 2 years later, Krombach refused to attend. Despite his absence, Krombach was found guilty and sentenced to 15 years in prison. However, no international warrant was issued for his arrest. 2 years after Krombach's trial in France, he was arrested for drugging and raping a 16-year-old female patient. Confronted with the forensic evidence, he admitted to the crime and pleaded guilty. 5 other patients came forward to make complaints of rape against Krombach, but their testimonies were rejected due to lack of forensic evidence. Krombach reportedly spoke of the rape without repentance, but rather with amused cynicism. A psychiatrist who gave evidence described him as a narcissistic character who considered himself above the law. German authorities only fed into this delusion as he was given a suspended sentence. In a film called Kalinka's Last Journey, directed by Hilda Senning, Senning interviews 2 young girls who claim to have befriended and gone on vacation with Krombach, during which he drugged and raped them as well. One of the girls was only 14 at the time. Their mother did not believe them, claiming Krombach was a, quote, good man, and Krombach himself claimed to barely know them and denied ever going on vacation with them. But the girls had pictures with him from the trip. It seemed he had been getting away with his evil deeds his entire life. Bamberski was running out of options and time. The statute of limitations for his daughter's murder was quickly approaching. As a last-ditch attempt to get the justice he deserved, Bamberski became involved in a plan to kidnap Krombach and hand him over to French authorities. The plan was not of his own design, but when he heard about it, he was determined to make sure it worked. In 2010, Krombach was abducted from his home and dropped off in an alleyway where the French police were informed they could find a fugitive. Krombach was caught. Despite all of Germany's attempts to get Krombach released and stop the trial, the French turned them down at every corner. Bamberski was also set to face trial for the kidnapping of Krombach. He was content with going to prison if it meant his daughter got justice. He was given a 1-year suspended sentence. As for Krombach himself, he served 9 years of his 15-year sentence, eventually being released for health reasons in February of 2020. He died in an old age home in September 2020. Kalinka Bamberski was a young, bright youth with her whole life ahead of her. André Bamberski was a devoted father with a strong determination to see his daughter rested peacefully. 30 years is a long time to fight a seemingly impossible battle, but nothing compared to the seeming eternity of a life without your child. Thanks to Bamberski, his lawyers, and the dedicated authorities in France, Krombach was eventually judged for his lifetime of disservice, giving Kalinka and all of his other victims the peace of mind they deserve. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.